everybody I talk to, 9 out of 10 have that exact same experience. And the 1 out of 10 is, oh yeah, I fell in love with my baby the instant he came out into the world. And that's the abnormal thing. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I'm thrilled for those people.
Yes.
But the normal thing is what you and I experienced. Hi, and welcome to the Raising Men podcast. My name is Sean Dawson. I'm here with Caleb Scott. Caleb is the CEO of Better Dad Company and the host of the Better Dad podcast. He joins us from Springfield, Missouri, where he's the father of one son. Now, Caleb, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you have what is, to me, a particularly challenging journey in fatherhood, but one that I don't think is particularly uncommon. And I think you and I share almost a passion for this sense that there is a cultural tension against being a good dad somehow. And that's, I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. Thank you so much for coming on. And I appreciate you taking the time today.
Man, I'm happy to be here, kind of organically getting connected and just having that first conversation about the desired heartbeat for fathers and raising good men. And, knowing that it's not just here, that it's geographically across the nation where people are excited about encouraging men, especially in the space of being a father. I just, anytime we can continue this conversation, it's a pleasure to be a part of.
One of the things that happened to me, and it resonated with me in your story, is that becoming a dad changed me in ways that I would never have anticipated prior to the point. I mean, literally, as my wife and I were walking to the hospital as she was in labor, I didn't understand how much different I would be 12 hours later. and it never, I thought a lot about it. We planned a lot about it, and it still was so completely different that I didn't, it was a shock to me. And I'd love for you to share your story along the same lines. I think we had a similar experience there.
Yeah. So, I had plenty of friends who had gotten pregnant and had kids. And, just that camaraderie of being in the hospital in the waiting room, sitting outside and waiting to hear that first cry and, just like the fun of being there together. So when we got pregnant, we found out that we were in the middle of a global pandemic. COVID was at its peak. And so that meant a huge shift in hospital practices. So we didn't get to have our core group of support there. It was just her and I.
Yeah.
And so it was just, it wasn't bad. It was just very different. Expectations had to shift. And so we go through the process of delivering him. And as soon as they hand him to me, the doctor walks in and goes, "Hey, mom has COVID." And so the whole room shut down, and now 4 or 5 years removed, we know kind of what we know, but right then you didn't know anything. And so I became a dad 12 seconds ago, and I just found out that my son's mom is potentially dealing with something very scary and crazy. And so the hospital staff said, "Hey, you have to leave. You have to get a third-party test to prove that you don't have COVID, so you're actually allowed back in here." So, trying to navigate the emotions of, here he is. Oh my gosh, is she okay? I have to leave and maybe not come back. I'll never forget that drive. I just felt so numb. I was just in this weird moment of just, I hope I don't have it. And so I get the test. I don't have it. I come back. They're still figuring out hospital practices. So we were put in this COVID specific room and it just wasn't ideal. And so after about 2 days of, resting in what looked like a broom closet, we were like, you know what? I think it's probably time for us to go home. We can figure this out from here. And so then going home 14 days. So my son actually ends up getting COVID as
Oh
well.
my.
And so, we're in separate rooms. She's having to breastfeed with a mask on, like all the fun, tender moments of parenthood that you're anticipating were dramatically affected because of that. And so for 14 days, our families were just so anxious to come see him and meet him, and we couldn't because of this epidemic that had been affecting, not just that moment, but our entire lives, the lives of everybody on the planet. So it wasn't ideal circumstances to start parenthood, but we made it.
Yeah, that I can't imagine. And all of the moments that there's so many wonderful, tender moments that happen in those first, I don't know, couple weeks,
Mm.
and they were all kind of stolen from you, weren't you? Weren't they?
Yeah, and I don't know, 5 years down the road now, I look back at a lot of things that were terrible in the moment that ended up being such a blessing to us later, just because we were forced to kind of lean into some adversity that made us a lot more intentional, that made us a lot more excited about parenthood. But yeah, if I had it to do all over again, I would not suggest, doing it solo and everybody getting COVID and it being a huge panic.
Yeah, that time must have felt really overwhelming. And when you embark on the journey, if you embark on it intentionally, you have a plan, right? And you have your support structure and you have your family, and all of that evaporated for you, it seems. And so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the overwhelm? How do you deal with, and what would your advice be to somebody else who was feeling that same way? I mean, we're probably not going to go through a global pandemic
Sure.
in the near future again,
Fingers crossed.
but I think that feeling of overwhelm is universal,
Yeah.
to some
So,
degree or another.
w- you know, COVID had already taken a lot from us. I
Yeah.
lost my job about a month before he was here. Um, and just the reality of being in the medical field and that having such a major shift in who was allowed in the hospital and what hospitals were paying attention to and what mattered. So we had already experienced COVID taking something from us. So this was like another shot to the heart.
Yeah.
Um, but in reality, no matter what level of parenthood you're at, whether it's you're about to be parents, whether you're just new parents, whether you're 25 years down the road parents, things not going right is a common theme you're just gonna have to get used to. Um, and that's the brilliance of parenting, is that if it was easy and if it was all mapped out, it wouldn't be as fun. It wouldn't be as much of an adventure if you just had it all put together for you. You wouldn't love your kid the same if it was super easy to love them all the time.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, man, had it not been for my faith, I don't know if I really had a lot of hope in anything. It's dangerous to tie your identity to one specific thing, especially things that change or don't always feed our purpose. And so for me, the idea of leaning into my faith, trusting that God had a plan for what was going on, even though in the moment it was kind of crazy,
Yeah.
um, was genuinely a huge part of what dragged me through what seemed like a really difficult time.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I, so you a global pandemic hits. Shortly before that, you had found out that you guys were pregnant.
Right?
As a result of the pandemic, you lose your job in the medical field. And then this COVID thing absolutely disrupts what would normally be a particularly challenging time,
Yeah.
just amping it up to 3 or 4 times the level of challenge.
Yeah.
I just really have a lot of empathy for what you were going through there. Our own experience, our boy was 1 year old when COVID hit, and that wasn't ideal timing either. I don't think anybody in the world thinks that, oh boy, COVID came at the perfect time.
Right. Right.
And but we were positioned we had a place where we could work from home. We had a nanny lined up that could help us take care of the baby, and we both had jobs that could support that kind of structure.
Sure.
And it was still really, really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in what sort of tools and techniques and just the way of thinking. You mentioned your faith, and and how that helped get you through. What other tools and techniques did you have at your disposal to help you get through that time? Was there any fellowship with other men,
For
or
sure.
and how did you get through that?
Yeah, man, a good piece of advice is that, you always hear it takes a village. And the reality is it's not even a village to raise your child. It's a village to support you while you do it.
Absolutely.
Um, as men, we're so used to, just put it on our back and we'll find a way to climb that mountain. But the reality is that recipe ends in anger, ends in resentment and bitterness, or just complete exhaustion to the point that you just fail the people that you've committed to helping. So yeah, so fellowship, having a good support system, and if your family, like if you have a great family, lean on your family. I know not everybody has the privilege of having a close support system from family, but family isn't always blood.
That's
I
right.
was very fortunate to have very strong men that I had given the permission to have, the freedom to speak truth in my life, even if that truth wasn't easy to hear at the time. Hey Caleb, I think right now you're in a kind of a poor me position. I think you need to pull up your bootstraps and get going. Or
Yeah.
hey man, I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna vacuum your carpet. You just sit down and chill. And they're small things and they don't seem very significant, but at the time and in the moment, it was such a breath of fresh air because someone saw my struggle and participated in my struggle with me. And so um, my son's mom and I are not together.
Mm.
And so co-parenting comes with its own list of, added obstacles or difficulties or just challenges. And so, not only are you trying to figure out parenthood, but you're also trying to navigate a relationship that may have had some, um, you know, trauma in it that you don't want to bleed onto your kid, and you want to be able to try and repair, but you're also in a moment of exhaustion trying to figure out, when they sleep, what they need to eat. Is this a normal cough? Is it a not normal cough? Like there's so many things that
Right.
you're worried about. So yeah, so one of those things is community. The other thing that I talk about a lot. So when my friends get pregnant or someone I know gets pregnant, I kind of send them this like cheat sheet of things that I wish someone would have told me prior to becoming a father. And the one thing I say all the time is have grace.
Yeah.
Have grace for your partner. Have grace for your child. Have grace for your parents or for your in-laws, or grace for people that say things that they didn't mean to say it how it sounded. For the people that give you advice that you didn't ask for your kid who keeps you up at night, for yourself when you forgot diapers or you didn't buy enough wipes or you got angry when you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Having grace, man, that is abundant makes you so much better of a father.
Yeah.
That it's the singular piece of like emotion I try and possess at all times, because man, I know that I fail and fall so short, and I want other people to have the security to know that they don't have to be perfect when they're around me as well.
Yeah. Everybody's trying their best, aren't they?
Right.
And that's almost never not the case. Everyone is
Mm,
pretty much trying their best. Uh, there are a number of books out, psychology books and even economics books about the fact that we have two brains in our head. There's the what I call the Conan the Barbarian brain, which is the much more primitive brain, and it's the amygdala, and it's reactive, and it's
mm,
emotional, and it's what you need when you see a lion in the jungle, or when there's a
right.
speeding car coming for your kid. You don't have time to think it through and think about the physics of the situation. You just need to react. And
Mm,
then there's the Sherlock Holmes brain, where that's the analytical side, that's the prefrontal cortex, that's the thing that is supposed to take the signals and incorporate them into your map of the world and act appropriately. And that the grace that you mention is a shorthand for remaining in the Sherlock Holmes brain rather
Mm,
than
yeah,
taking the anger that you feel about this situation because your kid won't stop screaming
right.
and reacting and treating that as if it's real.
Mm,
You take it for the signal it is. Why am I feeling so angry right now? Oh, I'm feeling so angry because I am at my wit's end trying to troubleshoot this problem with my child, and I feel inadequate. I feel like this is a symbol of the entire fatherhood journey.
right.
And that is causing me to feel this anger. The kid isn't the problem. The problem
Mm,
is the framing.
mm,
And actually, it's not even merely a problem. It's also an opportunity to feel powerful,
yeah,
to rise above that. But you have to stay in that Sherlock Holmes brain. You have to give yourself the grace. And that also goes for other people. You give your child the grace that they're trying their best too. It is a
mm,
baby.
mm,
The only signal that it has to get you to do what it needs you to do is the screaming.
yeah.
And imagine how frustrating that is. I remember having the realization when our boy was young, he ate 4 or 5 times what people were saying that we should feed him. He would just keep eating. It was the most amazing thing. We would eat it. We fed him 2, 3 times the amount that they told us. Oh, he'll probably eat about this many
Mhm.
milliliters. And he was at 3 times that, and he was still crying. It
Oh,
turns
yeah,
out he was still crying because he was still hungry.
right,
And the number of milliliters or any of that stuff, that's not gospel. Just keep
right,
feeding him until he's not
right,
hungry
right.
anymore. And it turned out that our boy's experience, the first, I don't know, month of his life, was that his stomach was too small for him to feel sated. His stomach would be
Mm,
full and he would still feel hungry. And so he was upset about that. And it was and we had to troubleshoot through that. And I remember feeling this anger, and that's what it was. It was this, how could I be so bad at this?
yeah,
And you mentioned, you didn't put it in these terms, but you mentioned this lone wolf mythology that we
mm,
have in our culture. And I've come to this realization relatively recently that we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And everyone you see, everyone you admire has a team.
mm,
And they have, they have partners, they have children, they have parents, they have friends, they have aunts, uncles, they have non-family family. And even if it seems like this person is a lone wolf, lone cowboy kind of ruling the planet thing, that's never the case.
mm,
And if you think you need to do it alone, you're doing it wrong.
yeah,
And I found that I was doing that a lot. I was not willing to rely on other people. I was not willing to accept the wisdom that other people were giving me because I wanted to do it my own way.
mm,
And that's not right.
mm.
We need to find, it's not the most effective way to do it. The most
Uh,
effective way to do it is with community.
yeah,
And I
and
think that,
part of that
go ahead.
comes from too is knowing what you've done prior to becoming a parent. A lot of the times, I think it's so strategic that we have 9 months to prepare for a baby
Right.
because really those 9 months should be very, very intentional work towards making sure your finances are in a position to where you can adequately serve your household,
Yeah.
making sure that your emotions are in check, dealing with some things that you thought you had dealt with but really haven't dealt with, investing in a community that when this baby comes is there to support you. And so that 9 months is a really crucial time, especially for men, because women, the moment they find out they're pregnant, are physically connected to that baby
That's right.
until it's born, right? Like that's an immediate lifestyle change, no matter what. for us as men, we hear it, we're told it, we can see the ultrasound and we can know that we were a part of it, but really, like, until that baby is physically here, your role feels insignificant, but it's really not. Like, your role as a father in those 9 months is actually so crucial because you are building a way to facilitate potential problems. You're working on communication strategies. You're working on things that you are ahead of time seeing down the road, knowing that a major change in our life, a major change in how we spend, where we spend our time at, who we spend our time with is coming. And I can either wait and try and figure it out on the fly, which is just not my suggestion because of how difficult it is. But you can really start in this moment and say, man, there's a lot of things that I think I could tighten up that would bless my family and bless my household when this baby comes.
Yeah. Yeah. That preparation aspect, I absolutely love that sentiment. It's something that I wish that I had appreciated and done more when we were expecting, when we had, I wasted those 9 months, frankly. And so ended up scrambling on the other side of it.
And don't
And
get me wrong, like, as much as I would love to say we got it all figured out in 9 months, like, there's a lot of time I wasted
oh
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'd love to say I have it figured out 5 years down the road, but I don't.
Right.
So yeah, so people that are listening that are like, "Man, I wasted my 9 months, it's over." No, it's not over. But if you have the privilege, um, to actively prepare, fatherhood, you are successful in fatherhood with adequate preparation because it's inevitable that your kid is gonna say something, do something, experience something that affects the way that you function.
Yeah,
Your kid's mom is going to do things, experience things, say something that affects the way that you function. And either you can be the piece that blesses your household, or you can be the gasoline on a smoldering fire that sets everything ablaze. And that
that's
that
right.
comes from individual work. That's not necessarily something you can rely on your wife for, you can rely on your kid for, because they're hoping that you've got enough peace about you that when bad things happen, you don't panic.
That is such an excellent point. And there's a third option too, which is you run away and
Mm,
you
mm.
don't confront the issue at all. And so, dealing with conflict is is a real challenge for a lot of men, I think, and I certainly struggled with this. And obviously, the hardest way to deal with conflict is to head it to keep calm and deal with it straight on. And
Mm.
I think a lot of us choose avoidance, or a lot of us choose we puff up our chests and we confront it in an unhealthy way. How do you feel like fathers can model a healthy way to deal with conflict, especially for their sons, or how do you deal with conflict? How do you think about conflict and
Yeah, the
how to
truth
remain
is
calm
that
there?
we are a product of what we saw. I
Mm.
fully believe that men will do better when they're shown better.
Yeah,
Men require demonstration, and so a lot of the times, if we ever saw our dad handle conflict, that's kind of the natural way that we lean into handling conflict ourselves. So if your dad was an explosive, angry type, you tend to be that way, or you tend to be so anti that you end up going complete opposite direction to where you're
yeah,
just kind of a pushover and you don't care about anything and you just let it all happen.
that's right.
So so conflict management strategies come from a handful of places. Number one, like I talked about, it's your identity. If your identity is in something that is temporary, or that often changes through the fluidity of culture, or so the other day I have a partially torn rotator cuff,
Mm.
and it's affected the way that I've been able to work out. And so, like, God has been convicting me about my identity in fitness. And, like, don't get me wrong, fellas, like, I want you in the gym being the best version of yourself physically that you can be. But when something as minuscule as a minor injury occurs, that it warps your entire ideology of who you are as a man, that's dangerous. You know what I mean? When,
Absolutely.
when even in fatherhood, like, a lot of culture and society glamorizes a really bought in father,
Mhm.
but almost to the point that we've pushed a dad to saying, "Hey, you're only good when you crush it as a father, so that when you do inevitably fail, which we all will, it wrecks your whole world.
That's right.
And so if you've not learned how to separate your identity from things that change, you're just on a path of constant disaster because we fail. We're human beings. And the other thing I think that's super important about conflict management is perspective. It's really easy to look at the rest of the world and think about how it serves you
Hmm.
or how it's failed you.
Hmm.
But the reality is that everybody wakes up every day with something. You know what I mean? Like on the same planet we live right now while recording a podcast, there are kids that are starving. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously, like that's a real life issue that there are kids waking up today looking for their next meal to keep them alive for today.
Yeah.
And so perspective really matters. When your child is tired and they're hungry and they're overstimulated, and like that's your job, man. That's where you get to slide in and be the peace. When your kid's mom has been taking care of the house and has been, trying her best to navigate this, and the baby's not listening, or your toddler's being a crazy person. If you don't have the perspective to look at her or to look at your kid and know, man, in this moment, you must be really going through it. How can I bless it? All you're going to do is see this affects me, this upsets me, this bothers me. So then your response is going to be out of a victim mindset. And you can't be a
Hmm.
successful father and a victim.
That's right. Yeah. I'm not sure that you could be a successful person and a victim,
Also fair.
but certainly not a successful father and a victim. And that brings to mind the concept of accountability. And I remember something you said from our prep sessions that puts it so succinctly that I'd love for you to expand on, which was that accountability is love.
Mm.
And I feel like that's such a powerful statement. I would love to inspect that more. How do you feel that applies to fatherhood, and how does that apply to your son and your dynamic with your son's mom?
Yeah. So it's a process. I think if I can frame anything for anybody is that if you don't have it figured out today, it doesn't mean you won't eventually have it figured out. This
Hmm.
this is a clay pot that we are waking up and shaping every day. If you think that there's going to be a final product at 3 years old, you're confused and you're going to get your feelings hurt.
Yeah.
So number one, knowing that every day you're just doing your best. So the Better Dad podcast came with not being better than anybody else,
Hmm.
but with an effort to be better as often as we can be.
Yeah.
And so the idea of accountability and love, it's just like we look at our kids. And my son walks in and wants to grab a kitchen knife and sword fight with it.
Right.
While in his head, he 100% has no intention of cutting anyone's finger off. That's the reality that could happen.
Yeah.
So my ability to foresee potential problems and in that moment caution or speak against his decisions prevents future um, problems.
Yeah.
And so that essentially is accountability from me to my child. But also, like I spoke about earlier, having a community of accountability as well for people that you trust and you've given permission to say, hey man, this is not you. This response is completely out of character. Are you good? Do we need to step away? Do we need to go, hit a few golf balls and like get some stuff off your chest? Because your family relies on you to be a central focal point of peace, right? Like our children and our children's parents thrive when we at our core are peaceful.
Yeah.
This world is full of chaos. There's always going to be chaos. You turn on social media or the news, it's chaos after chaos after chaos.
That's right. That's the business
And,
model of those.
and so if we can't find a way to navigate that chaos, it doesn't mean that it goes away. You can't keep your kid or your household from chaos.
Hmm.
That I think the other mistake we make as parents sometimes is that we're so quick to keep our kid from scraping their knee from riding the bike that they never learn how to deal with the scraped knee. It's not
Right.
necessarily preventing chaos. It's educating um, how to handle it, but also remaining in a place of peace from it. So yeah, the accountability is love. Is our culture is so about tolerance and acceptance, and I really think that that's a tough model for accountability, because we just accept whatever it is for however it is because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But in my household, it's not about acceptance and tolerance.
Right.
It's about prevention and education, and it's about, I was instructed and given the responsibility of taking care of my son,
Mhm.
and it would be a disservice to his well-being if I was not willing to hold him accountable, even if it was difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one of the signals that I've understood about the world is that there's always a tension. And so when you say, "Oh, we need accountability," or sorry, we need acceptance and love. Okay, that's great. But what is that intention with? And that is
Mm,
intention with accountability.
mm,
And there's always that tension always exists, and you need to find the healthy balance at any moment of how much do we need of this thing. At the end of the story, what you need to create as a father, in my view, is you need those castle walls. You need your family to feel like, okay, in this area, we're safe. We're
mm.
psychologically safe. We're physically safe. We can
Yes.
deal the chaos that's out there in the world isn't going to come in here. It's not made, it is dampened here. It is
Mm,
not made worse here.
yes.
And all of this, everything we're talking about here, the accountability, the acceptance, the love, the grace, all of that is contributing to that walled in, safe space
Mm,
where we can feel, okay, I am free to explore my personality. I'm free to explore um with behaviors. And one of the things, so my son constantly does things that that blow my head up. Like, how can you be that crazy to
mm.
have done that thing? This morning, he took the television remote and put it in his mouth, just as far back as it would go, just to experiment and see how things would go. And on the one hand, that drives me crazy. It's like, and he's looking at me when he does that. And I said, "What are you doing? Did you just put that in your mouth?" And he goes, "Yeah, it just felt good." And I go, "We can't put the remote in our mouth, man." And he goes, "Okay." But so on the one hand, it's maddening
Yeah.
because what are you doing putting the remote in your mouth? On the
Oh,
other
yeah.
hand, there's a part in the back of my head that says, you know what? You've kind of succeeded as a father in this moment because he felt safe enough to do that experiment.
That's
And
good, man.
the experiment was crazy,
Yeah.
but at least he feels like he can experiment. He doesn't
Yeah.
feel like I'm going to fly off the handle or go something crazy or do something insane or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, I had that thought this morning when that happened. And frankly, he does stuff like this every day. And there's that tension again, right? It's the tension between I want him to feel comfortable to go out and find his individuality, but I
Sure.
also need him to be part of the social fabric of the world and
Yeah.
to collaborate with other people.
One thing that's it's I was thinking about in this idea of how far do we go with intervention with our kids? At what age, do we let them experiment further the older they get? I'll never forget in my mid-20s, I was just chasing the world.
Yeah,
And my mom, who was and continues to be a spiritual foundation in my life, was so clear about being against where I was and what I was doing, but so present and loving me
yeah,
that she didn't have to accept what I was doing in order to love me the same way. And her willingness to love me while also being staunchly against what I was doing was like the greatest form of love I've ever experienced.
yeah.
And her ability
That's right.
to both love me, but also stand firm in what she knew was wrong and make it a point for me to understand that it was wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that was such the greatest form of love I think I've ever experienced, because just like we said about your circle of influence, you'll find that you've got a lot of yes men in your circle, because either your relationship gives them purpose, you've got some business acumen they're trying to absorb, you're just in the same field at the same time, so it just makes
Right.
sense to be together.
Right.
But the reality is that the people who really matter, who really have an impact on your life and what you're doing, are the ones who can both actively love you, but resist poor behavior.
Yeah.
And that's true love. And so the same thing with my child. I want my son to know, man, I've got your back and I love you fiercely and unconditionally. But
Yeah.
I also resist this type of behavior because I know it's incorrect.
Yeah. I somebody who can give you constructive criticism
Mm,
is a gold mine in your life.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Nobody and you should be able to do that for other people as well. And because it's hard, people will tear you down. People will be happy to tear you down, and
Mm,
people will be happy to blow smoke up your skirt.
hmm.
Very few people will actually give you criticism that is constructive in nature, in a positive way, in a way that is there to build you up. And I think a lot of people are resistant to hear criticisms.
Mm,
We're used to hearing them from our enemies, in the
right.
form of attacks. And
Right.
when it comes from our friends, it can feel really scary because maybe we don't have the community we thought we did, right?
Right.
And but we need to have, again, it goes back to that grace of being able to
Mm,
hear the difficult thing to hear and
yes.
respond with gratitude.
Yes.
And Mom, that's not the kind of thing I wanted to hear right now, but I really appreciate you being willing to share it. Is a
And
tough.
it wasn't even an immediate response either.
Right.
Like I stayed in this path of destruction,
Yeah.
and I just remember knowing where she stood, but also not feeling any kind of resistance from her love. And
Yeah.
like that was it was such a weird but like heavenly balance of, man, I love you so much, but I love you so much that I'm not willing to accept or tolerate what you're doing, because I have always cared about your well-being and I know how this ends. And so
Right.
the other thing about community, because we as men struggle with this. We go, man, we want good, strong men in our life, but
Yeah.
where are those guys at? How do I even find them?
That's right.
And we think it's in the workplace, or it's the buddy we golf with on the weekends, and you find yourself in these very surface level conversations.
Yeah.
How are the kids? How's golf? How's work? Good, good, great. I mean, as men, we say it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, and we don't really know that there's 257 other emotions that we can have as responses to stuff.
Hmm.
It's either I'm fine or I'm angry. That's
Yeah.
what we know.
That's right.
So, developing a community first means being someone who can participate in community driven things.
Hmm.
Like, how do you invite other men into your life? I talked about giving permission. One of my closest friends, Nick, is a guy who, when we first met, I would have hit him in the mouth for talking to me the way that he talks to me.
Right.
But as we have done life together, and as we've like really, he's carried me through a lot of really tough moments. His ability to say really difficult things, I've had to give him permission to. And even now, there are times where I'm like, dude, you're way off base. I'm not trying to hear it. But 3, 4, 5 hours later, when I've sat in it, I'm like, man, he's so right.
Yeah.
And I know he's right, because Nick doesn't need anything from me.
Mm.
He's not my friend because I've got some sort of business acumen that he's trying to absorb and work for his business. He's there because he loves me and he loves my kid. So
Yeah.
when he speaks some hard truth into my life, it's because he loves me. I'm like that kind of community, that kind of like relational proximity from another strong man who's actively seeking to be a good father and a husband in his own life. It's invaluable.
That's right. And I think that so my wife has 8 women like that in her life.
Mm,
And um if we're not careful, we'll end up with zero.
Mm.
And I think a lot of men have zero friends, essentially, meaning people that they could come to in a real moment of desperation.
You know what's funny is that I've given this analogy to men before. When you're getting married in your early or late 20s, men never have a problem picking their groomsmen. It's always the brides that are trying to find bridesmaids or
Yeah,
have enough or have the right ones or does Tiffany not get along with Haley or all this stuff.
right.
But then you flip it and you go 20, 30, 40 years down the road into your marriage. If you were to ask those men, hey, if you were to get married again today, who would be your groomsmen?
Uh-huh.
And the panic that comes over those men's face because all of those men that they thought were their day one guys, they haven't spoken to.
Right.
And the women, they've got a whole book club of people that they can get together with right now.
That's
They'd
right.
have 30, 40 women up there. And we're like, okay, so why are we struggling? I go,
Yeah.
because we have no groomsmen.
Yeah.
We have no men in our corner. And so like the toughest thing about 30 and on is that our male friendships dwindle and we say we get busy or we say we just don't like the same things. But just like anything, it takes active participation. It takes a willingness. And I think we've just lost the value in what it means to have good, strong men in the same room and like what kind of stuff that inspires for them and the rest of the world and their families.
And we're losing the cultural institutions that made that happen by default a
Mm,
little bit, right? I mean, everybody's work from home now. And so there isn't the office. You don't have the office friendships you used to have
right,
because you're not going into the office and having lunch with
right.
Joe. Um, the significance and importance of churches has
Mm,
dwindled substantially in the
mm,
last 20 years or so. And so we don't have that as fellowship anymore. We don't have nobody's there are no young members of the Masons,
mm,
right? And that's something I think we would do well as men to figure out how to rebuild
mm.
because the tools are there, right? In this digital virtual age, we should be able to create that sense of community in a positive way much better than everybody could 50 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
But we're not quite there yet. We're still, maybe it's just we're we're 20 years in and we're still in the early days of social media, but it seems to me that social media is being used as a way to drive people apart or create anger these days as
Mm,
opposed to bring fellowship. And we need to be intentional about creating these spaces where men can have fellowship, I
yes.
think.
Yes. And again, like I said, the podcast that I started was because when I started to look for literature on like dads that were just ripping
Mhm.
space apart, crushing
Yeah.
it, that there just wasn't a lot of dynamic literature. It was
Yeah.
like, hey man, love them, keep them alive, do your best. And I was like, I had those three down, I think. But
Right.
like where was the value in like community? Where was the value in grace and conflict management and losing your identity to fleeting, changing, fluid things? Like none of that was there. And
Yeah.
so like I am not the authority on anything at all. So like don't Google my PhD because it's in nothing.
You won't find it.
But you know what I mean? Like just the heart of like pioneering vulnerability out loud and saying, man, I did this well. You should try it.
Yeah.
Or like I totally screwed this up. You should avoid it.
Yeah. You know, another one of those tensions that brings to mind for me is this tension between vulnerability and resilience.
Mm,
And I'm wondering how you feel about that and how you think about that. And obviously resilience comes from experiencing pain and experiencing failure and getting back up after you fall off the horse.
mm,
And you want to encourage that. in your boy. You want to make sure that he has resilience. On the same token, you want to express your empathy too, right?
Mhm.
And so somehow you have to communicate that I'm here for you, I have your back, but you're the one who needs to stand up and dust yourself off and go get back on
Mhm.
the horse. I can't put you back on the horse. And
Yeah.
that's a tension that I've really struggled with in my journey. I wonder how you deal with that.
So it's funny. Yesterday or the day before was National Sons Day or whatever. Something came across Facebook,
Mm,
and I posted a picture of my kid, and I said, "Fatherhood is about balance. It's about sometimes knowing that boo boos need kissed, and sometimes knowing that boo boos need dirt rubbed in them.
yeah.
Sometimes knowing that he needs water, and sometimes knowing he needs an ice cold Fanta. It's sometimes knowing that just the navigating each moment because there's no handbook or rule book on how this is supposed to be. There really is a lot of value in a mother and her nurturing ability, and there's a lot of value in a father in his position of security.
Yeah.
And when you co-parent, you kind of have to absorb both roles sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And that's tough because that can be confusing to your kid.
Mhm.
And that can be essentially stealing from them too, because you weren't adequately designed to facilitate that role at all. But so my son very often, and not just my son, but you will see that kids look to how you react to the conflict they experience.
Mhm.
If he falls down, the women in our life are, "Oh, are you okay?" And, like, it's just
Yeah,
this immediate panic, and it's not from a wrong place. They are, like, fixers and helpers and nurturers, and so they saw their baby hurt, and they wanna run to him. But I also know that my son looks at me, and
yeah.
he goes, My response is gonna be directly affected by the way that my dad responds to this,
Mhm.
and if I'm not prepared, I have the same panic.
Yeah,
And if I instill panic in my son's life, his default response to conflict will be panic.
that's right.
And so it doesn't mean bubble wrapping him when he rides a bike. It doesn't mean not allowing him to go to birthday parties because kids have snot and they might get it on him. It's not any of that. It's the idea that, hey man, when you get in my truck and you tell me about something that happened. So they at a school they can lose points or get points for
Hmm.
behavior or whatever. It's a
Yeah,
it's a great way for parents to partner with the schools, after school hours.
yeah.
And so I saw on the app that he had lost a point. And so we got in the truck and I said, "Hey, what happened?" And he said, "Well, this kid was doing this." And I said, "Hey," I said, "I'm not that kid's dad. And I asked you what happened." And so he stopped for a minute and like he saw that I wasn't gonna continue the narrative that it was somebody else's fault.
Mhm.
And that's a small thing, but at 5 years old, it's I've never taught my son how to lie. You know what I mean? There wasn't like a class where we sat down and said, "Hey, this is how you get yourself out of trouble. You just tell somebody what they want to hear." That's
That's right.
never been taught to my son.
Of course not.
But somehow my son knows how to do that,
Yep.
right? There's a brokenness about us as humans, which is why I believe as a Christ follower that we need Jesus. But when
Yeah,
I look at my son, he has by default learned how to protect himself almost at a scary disadvantage. And
mhm.
I really believe that like true masculine fatherhood comes in learning to apologize, asking for forgiveness, and doing it organically, not being forced into it. So we had this conversation in my truck where I said, "Hey, regardless of what somebody else does, what did you do? Like, what
Mhm.
was your response in this moment?" And he realized that, yeah, he could have been better. He could have walked away from that situation. And so a lot of times it's trying to help your kids get to the realization that you've already known.
Yeah,
Because we have 30, 40, 50 years of life experience that we've, you know, stepped in enough potholes to know we can see one 10 feet away and be like, all right, I'm going to swerve. But my son, who's just now learning how to drive, is hitting every pothole along the way.
that's right.
So I can either go pave the road for him for right now, and he just
Yeah,
have this smooth sailing. And then when he goes to college at 18, he's never seen a pothole. Then he just wrecks his entire life.
yeah.
or I can help him navigate potholes or repair his car once he drives over 'em, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just the idea of not keeping our kids from panic, but having a response of peace and security in that moment so that they know how to handle things adequately.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are potholes in the road that aren't going to damage the car. And then there are ditches on the side of the road that will destroy the car.
Mm,
And you can't let them go off into the ditch, but
right,
you gotta let them hit the potholes.
right.
And there's, again, going back to this kind of central theme, there's always a tension.
Mm,
And there's a tension between bubble wrapping your kids and, when they get off in the world, they're going to be completely unprepared. And there's also a tension
right,
between letting them experience issues that aren't recoverable from their age, right?
yeah.
Or that will cause permanent damage. We can't let that happen either. And
I
it's
sat
a
with a
real
counselor
struggle.
one time. A counselor told me kids are really resilient,
Yeah.
and I remember hating that. I still hate that. Like, kids are resilient, they will recover from your parents' mess ups early on.
Mhm.
That sucks.
Yeah.
That should not be a statistical fact that counselors are telling people,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't need my son to be resilient. He wakes up every day learning how to be a better person. I want his biggest obstacle to be, do I want Cheez-Its or do I want Lay's for lunch? That's what I want my son to labor over,
Right.
not whether or not his dad was unhealed, not whether or
Right.
not his dad couldn't give up certain addictions, or not because his dad wasn't willing to do the repair so that he could be a whole healed person for his son.
Mhm.
So while kids are resilient, I think fathers need to avoid having resilient children.
Yeah. Fathers need to avoid forcing their kids to be resilient.
Yeah.
I think I think one of the tensions there is that's absolutely true. But going back to what you said before, you also need to give yourself the grace to
Mm,
recognize that just because you screwed that one thing up doesn't mean your kid is resilient and will get over that. It will be
right.
okay. Um, but you did screw it up, and you need to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. The reality though is that you can still lead in screw ups. I think that's what men miss. Men have never been taught that bad things can yield good things. We've been told that as a society, if you did something wrong, that's on your permanent record that will
Mhm.
dictate who you are and the way that the world sees you. The reality is that when I screw up, I have an opportunity to get on my knees and look eye to eye with my child and tell him that I was wrong.
That's right.
And I can even educate him and teach him on how to be wrong.
Mhm.
My ability to apologize, to own responsibility, to ask for forgiveness from my 5-year-old shows him how to experience being wrong and doing it in a manner of grace and doing it in a manner of respect. Because again, as men, we are the dismissive culture, like out of sight, out of mind. As long
Mhm.
as I just tuck it in my pocket, no one will ever see it, no one will ever know it. And then it just grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And then the reality is I've had to learn. I wanted to be a hero for my son from the moment he was born. I wanted to be just a superhero. But the reality is that if I convince my son that I do no wrong and eventually he sees me do wrong, I will have shattered his entire expectation of what it looks like.
That's right.
So I think hero qualities for humans, not for Iron Man or for Thor or Hulk. I think hero qualities for men come in learning to apologize often, to ask for forgiveness, to be gentle in gentle moments and bold in bold moments. You don't
Mhm.
have to pick a side. I told my son the other day this intruder drill because unfortunately we live in a world now where 5-year-olds have to practice what would happen if some psychopath showed up to their school.
Yeah.
So he was nervous about it. And he was asking me like, I don't really want to go to school tomorrow, or like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And and I said, son, here's what'll happen. If that ever occurs, they will lock the doors. And so I'm fortunate enough to have one of his teachers be a relative of mine.
Mm.
And so I said, what'll happen is they'll lock the doors. You guys will go hide. Our relative will text me and I will come to the school and I will dismember him in the parking lot, and I will leave him in pieces for the rest of the school to see when they leave. And it was morbid, but I was dead serious.
Yeah.
And so he's sitting in the back of my truck looking at me and he goes, I know that to be true.
Mm.
And so while some moments I'm on my knees looking at him saying, Daddy messed up, I'm sorry, I'm also telling him that I would rip his arms and legs off the person that ever tried to hurt him.
Yeah.
So you can live in both worlds.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you fall down this road of pushover, or you're just the guy who tries to lead out of fear and manipulation, and you go the opposite direction. So it's
Mhm.
about balance, man. It really is.
Yeah. Give me I'd like to end by talking about one thing that you just look back on and wish, man, I wish I'd done that differently. What's one
Mm,
big mistake that you made, or one thing that if I gave you the chance to do over one thing, what would it be?
that's tough. Because now 5 years in, everything that was in the moment bad has only produced a high caliber of character that's made me love my child more. Two things I'll say. Number one, if at all possible, find a way to make it work with your kid's parent. I
Yeah.
understand that things happen and that there are, brokenness and relationships and things that hurt, but it is easier to parent in the same house. And if it is all possible to put your pride aside, to find a way to make it work, even if it's 10 years down the road,
Mhm.
I would always advocate for a whole household. Now, if that doesn't happen, doesn't mean you cannot be successful, doesn't mean you cannot still work in harmony with the other side,
That's right.
because it's totally doable, 100%.
Yeah.
But that would be my first thing. And the second thing that I think I would suggest, a mistake that I made, and that I'm actively making, it's consistently removing yourself from the position where your identity as a father is the sole driving point to what you do. Because when they're 6 months old, all they do is, pee, poop, cry, and sleep.
Yeah.
And so you can take as many pictures, you can put them in the stroller and take them to the mall, and you go to the park, and everybody's like, oh, you're so great, you're so great. But then they become 3 and 4 and 5, and then you take them to a restaurant, and then they have breakdowns, and everybody looks at you, and you're like, "Oh, dude, you're making me look bad." And I was this good father, and I was killing it, but now people are looking at me, and I'm not this good father anymore. And I found that my identity as a dad is just as fluid as everything else in my life. So I really know that having a relationship with Jesus, that I have found my hope in, that I'm genuinely like, this is it, allows me to have the freedom to find purpose, but not identity in these other things. And so knowing that when I do screw up, which is inevitable, there is grace that allows me to repair and move forward.
I love that sentiment. Um I absolutely love that sentiment. On the flip side of that, what is one thing that you've done that you just are proud of, that you just, I know I crushed that?
Being present.
Mm.
A lot of times men think that they are ill-equipped to be fathers, and the truth is, you are. We are 100% ill-equipped. There is not enough books you can read. There is not enough parenting classes you can attend. There's nothing you can do to fully prepare you for becoming responsible for another human being.
Yeah.
But you can show up. And even if it's been 15 years since you've showed up, you can show up today or tomorrow. And while there may be resistance, and while there may be things that you don't know, or that you're not really sure how to navigate, the reality is that my son may say I've been a mess. He may say I've handled things poorly. He may say that, I did all these different things, but he can say it because he saw it, because I was there. And so I fully believe that the greatest gift you can give your child is your time. That currency is ever, 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 ever being spent every day, everywhere we go. And whether you work an 8 to 5, when you get off, you better lock in. You better put your phone away. You better get in front of your kid, and you better remind them how special they are. if you have the privilege to work from home or have a job that you have some flexibility, one thing I'm very grateful for, both his mom and I have had flexible work schedules that he didn't have to have daycare
Mhm.
in the first 4 years of his life.
Yeah.
And so we got some really, really good time with him.
Yeah.
And it's really made an impact on his development. And he is so secure, even in two households, knowing that, man, my mom and my dad, they were there. And I never had to wonder if my dad was going to be at a soccer game, or never had to wonder if my mom was going to, come be a part of this. Like, we were there.
Yeah.
So your presence, man, your presence matters.
Yeah. And more than just being there physically, being there with your attention
Mm,
and and your and your mental energy. You're not, browsing Twitter
yeah,
text messaging unnecessarily
right.
while you're supposedly with your kid. And I find that that can be some of the most fulfilling time that you end up spending with them
Mm,
is that just trash time. You're just driving in the car and hanging out and having some
yeah.
conversation about whatever. I've found that to be some really, really gold nugget time that
Something I'm doing we talked about this in the consult prior to this episode, is that in the studio that I'm in right now, we've started something called the Legacy Project.
Mm,
And we bring men in and we tell their stories of, birth origins all the way to where they are now. And we ask them questions about their own father. What is the best thing he did for you? What is the worst thing he did? How's your relationship with him now? And 10, 15 guys all had a similar response. And it wasn't that my dad gave me everything I wanted. There was never one Christmas I remember getting a cell phone or getting a car, or like, none of them. Not a
yeah,
single person cared about a single Christmas or birthday gift they ever had. Never mentioned. None of them cared what their dad did. None of them. Not one person was like, well, my dad was the CEO for this company, and so it got us cool perks and we got to go to basketball games, and none of them. Every single person that sat in this room that poured their heart about their relationship with the father is that he was there. I don't even remember how he responded. I don't even care how he responded. I just knew he was there. I just knew that when I came home from school, that he was there. When I woke up, he was there. I watched him ride the lawnmower. I watched him play baseball with me. And like, they weren't praising their father's attributes of just amazing, psychologically healed, perfect fatherhood characteristics.
yeah,
It's not as difficult as what we think. There's a lot of men that have run from this privilege because they thought they weren't built for it. Well, the truth is you're not, but you are crafted in the midst of it. Like, you
yeah.
are refined through fatherhood. Fatherhood brings out the greatest parts of you. And we talked about this, and I'll tell you this last thing. I'm an only child. I have no brothers or sisters. I've got no DNA shared with anybody. I don't, nobody looks like me. It's probably a good thing. But so so I become a father, and I'm holding him, and I know he's my kid, right? Like, I know I was there for the birth. I was there for the delivery. I saw it. They handed him to me. I'm on the birth certificate, like all these things. But, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I've connected with this thing. And
Yeah,
I was like, I'm a piece of crap, dude. How do you not connect with this?
yeah,
And I'm so frustrated because his mom, she had no problem. Like, that was her baby from the moment she found out she was pregnant, and he came out and it was hers, and she loved him, and he ate from her and he loved her and she soothed him. And so I'll never forget, I was about 90 days in, and he's in his bassinet and he wakes up and he's crying. And I run in there, you're just so panicked, you think something's going wrong. And I grab him and I pick him up and I look down at him. And I've been a father for like 3 months.
mhm.
And I look at this little boy, and for the first time, I, like, remember seeing a baby picture of me and then seeing him and being like, "Dude, you came from me. This is so cool." And then when I spoke, and he heard my voice and he knew that my voice was safe and he stopped crying, dude. Like I was shook because I was given that privilege to be the security for another human being, that my voice, that my heartbeat, that my smell, that my temperature gave peace to another human. But it was 90 days after he was born.
That's right.
And so all these men are like, dude, I, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that it wasn't love at first sight. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you right now, I didn't, I knew I was supposed to, but I didn't fall in love with him until like 90 days in. And at first I was embarrassed to admit that. But what I found is that when I talk to men, men struggle with that too.
Yeah.
We didn't have the privilege of it growing inside of us. So overnight, they're just like, hey, now you're responsible for this entire child's well-being forever. Good luck. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, sheesh.
And I'm
So, yeah,
having a
man,
hard time manufacturing care for
Yeah.
this thing.
Yeah.
And this was exactly my experience as well. And I felt like the ideal was you fall in love with your baby the instant he looks you in the eye, which is what happened with my wife as well. And that couldn't be farther from the truth for me. And I felt ashamed and I felt like a failure right out the gate. And what I discovered is that that's the norm. Everybody I talk to, 9 out of 10 have that exact same experience. And the 1 out of 10 is, oh yeah, I fell in love with my baby the instant he came out into the world. And that's the abnormal thing. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I'm thrilled for those people.
Yes.
But the normal thing is what you and I experienced.
Yep.
It's a struggle. And it doesn't come naturally. We are not wired the way women are.
And it's not talked about either. Like, I think men suffer in silence a lot because admitting that would tell the world, man, he doesn't love his kid.
It feels shameful. That's exactly right.
When deep down, all that dude wants to do is love his kid.
That's right.
And so I think conversations like this, man, what you're doing is so crucial because there are fathers, soon to be fathers, current fathers, seasoned fathers that listen to this and go, man, me too. So I fully believe in healing publicly so that someone who's suffering privately can experience the same kind of healing.
Yeah, I do too. That's exactly why we're embarking on this journey together. So before we wrap up, give me one good principle that you adopt and why you think that's important.
One good principle that I adopt that I think is very important. Your child will do what you do regardless of how good or bad it is. They see the best and the worst parts of you. Social media, you can lie. You can convince everybody else that you got it all together, but your kids see you. Your kids see how you interact with women. Your kids see how you interact with wait staff. They see how you do business. They hear phone calls that you make. They see how you respond to conflict. They see the food that you eat, the work you do or don't do in the gym. They see all of it. And that will directly influence the decisions and choices that they make. So do right.
That's a fantastic principle. And that's a great place for us to leave it off. Caleb Scott is the CEO of Better Dad Company. He is the host of the Better Dad podcast. Caleb, thank you again so much for taking the time to be part of this. And I look forward to catching up with you in the future.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Sean.
For my friend. Thanks.